Hello, my friends. Good morning. I'm curious. I'm running a little experiment to see what doing a live stream in the morning is like. I know from personal experience how hard it can be to get up, especially when you're stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, and your bed is just the safest place. And so a lot of times we'll spend hours scrolling first thing in the morning. Why is that? What makes you want to scroll in the morning? Procrastination is not laziness or lack of discipline. It's an avoidance mechanism. It's a defense mechanism to say, I don't want to deal with whatever it is out there in the real world. And I'm going to protect myself from it by avoiding it. If I can't feel anything, then I can't feel bad. And that's often what's happening when we are scrolling in bed. My goal today is to help as many people as I can who are struggling with procrastination. I want to answer as many questions as I can, and I would love to have you help me in that quest. So please, if you feel so inclined, do some of the algorithm things. I'd love, most of all, to see some comments. What is it that you've been putting off lately? The dark cloud that's been hanging over your shoulder. Please drop it in. And in the meantime, I'll just keep waxing eloquently. So if we know procrastination has everything to do with avoidance, everything to do with emotional discomfort, and very little to do with a lack of willpower, let's think about the strategies that you've been using. Most people are going to think, okay, if I want to do something, but I see myself not doing it every day, I must be the problem. And so the solution is to work harder, to just try more. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting that the results are going to change. How long have you been telling yourself, I'm just going to try harder next time? This isn't an issue of character. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's a strategy issue. And for too long, you've been using the strategy, do this or else. Your parents, your teachers, your coaches, your mentors, since you were born, it's always been this idea of, I'm going to force you to do things because it's in your best interest, hopefully. And the way I'm going to force you is with something that you are afraid of. Do this or you're going to get a bad grade. Do this or you're going to get fired. Do this or I'm going to give you a punishment. It's always this manipulation, this forcing of behavior that you've been accustomed to your whole life. So when you try and motivate yourself to do things, your first thought is to use the only strategy you've ever used, which is consequences. And so, when you try to punish yourself into doing things, has that ever worked? If you just joined, so did I. I've been live for about 3 minutes now, and I'd love to have as many people in here as possible. I want to help as many people with procrastination as I can. So please do me a favor and help us to grow this group today. See if we can get some good questions in here. If you could do some of the algorithm things, tapping the screen, and of course my favorite is leaving a comment. What is it that you've been putting off lately? That dark cloud that follows you around that you can't seem to shake? That thing that you can't talk to anybody about because of all the shame and the guilt? Maybe it's that you have trouble starting. Maybe it's that once you start, you can't seem to cross the finish line. You can't seem to submit the project, put the final touch on, and send it off into the world. Leanne says putting off organizing, deep cleaning the living space. Well, Leanne, if you were to deep clean the living space today, what would be the reward in the short term? Because sometimes with chores, we don't feel much of a reward because it's just going to get dirty again by next week. And it feels like, what's the point? There's never a good time to clean out the garage or mow the lawn. There's never a good time to do these things. And so often we wait until we have to do it, until company is coming over, or until the grass is so long that it's gotten to a point where I have to take care of it. We wait for some sort of consequence to force us into taking action because that's what we're used to. When there's no short-term reward that matters to us, we'll wait for a short-term consequence that matters to us. A clean space feels so nice, though, Tracy says. Sometimes. It depends on your self-talk and how you view the results of your labor. Because sometimes you have a big project and you spend a whole day cleaning and it's still not done. And there's still more things to take care of. And in that situation, are you getting partial credit? Is there a partial reward? Because when the only reward is the one that you get at the end, it can feel hard to stay motivated while you're in the middle. Beautifully Broken says, my to-do list. One of the hardest things to deal with is when you get to the end of the day and there's still things on that to-do list. How does that make you feel? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel unproductive? Many times we blame the person who's supposed to be doing the to-do list, but we never blame the person who wrote the to-do list in the first place. A lot of times the feelings we have about being unproductive have more to do with bad goal setting than they do with bad performance. That's a question to ask yourself. Top 1% says, I have to take an exam for my current work. I also have to study for another real estate exam. I have a brand I never fully opened up online and have it working properly. I also have a vault of art and never released debut mixtape for the last 10 years. Ah, my friend. This sounds to me like you might be a recovering perfectionist. I know all too well because that is also something I have dealt with. Perfectionism is actually procrastination in disguise. It appears to others like, oh, you just have high standards. It's not really what's happening. What's really happening is that you care more about avoiding being imperfect than you do being perfect. This is fear of rejection, fear of the uncertainty of your performance, fear of the consequences that could happen if you aren't good enough. And so your brain will do anything to protect you from that negative outcome. And the easiest way to protect you is to avoid trying. Because if you don't try, you can't fail. You can't succeed either, right? But your brain doesn't care about that. It's protecting you from something it thinks is dangerous. This is very similar to when you pull your hand away from a hot stove. Your brain says, nope, we're not doing this, and it automatically takes over, takes the wheel away from you, puts you on autopilot. You're welcome, top 1%. What are the solutions? Well, one of my favorite solutions for perfectionism-related procrastination is a concept called think like a scientist. This is from Dr. Adam Grant, one of my favorite authors. He's got a great podcast, too. He's at the University of Pennsylvania. Think like a scientist is this idea where you challenge yourself to run experiments. Because when we are stuck in this all or nothing, success or failure, black and white mindset, it's very easy to just turn your editor on and be like, no, I shouldn't try that because I might fail. And if you realize, oh, well, failure actually teaches me a lot. I need to find a way to value what I learn from the experiment rather than just whether the experiment was a success or failure. So a good metaphor here is, imagine you're trying to cure cancer and you've run hundreds of experiments, they've all failed, but then finally you succeed and you cure cancer. But if you have no idea how you did it and you can't repeat the experiment, is it really a success? Sometimes we can luck into short-term success, but if it doesn't teach you something, if you don't learn how to repeat that success, it's not really valuable to you. And sometimes you can submit, your art, or you can do the project, or you can do the thing, and you can luck into some sort of positive results. But if you don't know why or how those results were successful, it's not really useful to you. So in a way, what we're trying to do is, instead of trying to get the ego boost of, oh, look how great I am, we're trying to say, let me learn how to be great every time, how to be great more often. And a lot of times failure can be your best teacher. So we're changing your relationship with failure. We're learning to crave failure because of what it teaches you. And we're learning to say that, oh, if I fail once, it doesn't make me a failure. A recovering perfectionist. Craig says, is there an approach to tracking these experiments like they wreck or you wreck? Recommend. Yeah, my personal strategy and what I do with my clients is I think the solution to procrastination is improving your own self-evaluation. Now, we know that procrastination is not a lack of discipline. It's not that you don't have enough willpower. The issue is that you feel uncomfortable. You feel scared, you feel anxious, you feel bored, you feel some sort of feeling that you don't want to deal with, so you just avoid the feeling by avoiding the task. Now, who makes me feel uncomfortable the most? The answer is me, with my own self-judgment. I am so hard on myself, and I bet you are too. And the harder you are on yourself, often unfairly, the more likely you are to procrastinate in order to solve that problem. So, to answer your question, is there an approach to running these experiments? Yes. Have a formal self-evaluation. It doesn't have to take more than 5 minutes. Now, I have dozens and dozens of tools that I teach and that I use on myself, but what is the use of all these tools if I'm not writing down something about, what worked and what didn't? You need a formal reflection process, because if you try and do it all in your head, you're going to forget things, you're going to be biased, you're going to be emotional. It's impossible to run these things in your head. I mean, imagine trying to run a business in your head. Are you really going to keep all the sales figures and everyone's salary and all the tax information? Are you really not going to write anything down? Yet, when it comes to running ourselves, you are the CEO of yourself. We rarely will do all the processes that we know are helpful. So the issue often for people is like, this seems like a waste of time. This is so much extra work. It's one more thing to add to my to-do list. You're right. It is. And it can be really difficult, which is why I advocate for a weekly review instead of a daily review. Trying to do something every day like that is a lot. But spending 5 minutes a week will change your life. And it doesn't have to be more than 3 questions. What did I do well this week? What did I not do well this week? And what do I want to change for next week? Set it up so you get this sent to your phone every week. You can do it from bed. It's often what I do. If you miss a couple days, it's okay. But if you have effective self-evaluation over a number of weeks and months, you will see growth no matter what. It's one of the easiest things that you can do. I'll stop judging myself later. Anxious and overwhelmed, Baking Bulgarian says. I like that name, Baking Bulgarian. Anxiousness, overwhelm, these are the causes of procrastination. It is not that you suck. It is not that you're lazy or you lack willpower. It has nothing to do with that. Sneha says, what do you do when a past negative review makes you freeze and avoid a one-day project for work for a week? That's a good question, Sneha. A past negative review. One failure does not make you a failure. In fact, you probably want to get constructive feedback so that you can learn and improve. It's sometimes in your head, we get a little confused. We start to feel like if I fail in front of other people, that they will label me as a failure forever. We start to worry about our impression that we make on others and its effect that it's going to have on our lives. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that other people, what they think of you doesn't matter. That's bad advice. I really get frustrated when people say that. Like, oh, don't worry about what other people think. It doesn't matter. It does. It generally does. However, I would also point out that in multiple studies, and probably in your own personal experience, you've seen that when other people make mistakes, you are very forgiving and understanding. But when you make mistakes, you don't give yourself the same grace. And so I would guess that some of the people in your workplace, Sneha, have made big mistakes, have gotten negative reviews before, yet they keep going. Now, you want to get those negative reviews because you want to do a good job. Clearly, that's why you're here. And so hopefully this review is pointing you the way forward, what you should be doing more of. It's not a death sentence. It's not written in stone what your potential is. You have the capability to learn and grow. If you didn't believe that, you probably wouldn't be here listening to me. So now we have to get past the all or nothing mindset, the success or failure mindset. Dr. Carol Dweck would call this the fixed mindset. And then what she would call what we want to be towards the growth mindset. Now, we know that we have the capability to learn and grow, but sometimes our brain will trick us into taking actions where, It seems like we don't believe that we have the capacity to learn and grow. We try and show up perfectly every single time, which often leads to us not showing up at all. Because if I can't show up perfectly, then I just won't show up. This is something I talk about often in my community, the Proof Lab, because a lot of these, I hate to say it, but a lot of people who work in the industry, they want you to perform productivity. They want you to show up and have something to show. And the truth is that pressure is not helping you. It will help you sometimes. If I hold a gun to your head, you'll do whatever I tell you to do, right? And so if I'm saying you have to be more productive or else, like, that pressure will sometimes work, but it doesn't sustain. You burn out quickly. And what we've learned through multiple studies is that something called psychological safety is the most important thing that you can have in a workplace or within yourself. Psychological safety is this idea that the more comfortable I am with making a mistake, the fewer mistakes I actually make. So if I have a boss who's an asshole, who's always riding me and giving me a hard time about things, I'm probably going to be pretty tense, pretty uptight, pretty stressed. And the more stressed I am, the worse my performance is going to be. But if I know that if I make a small mistake, I'm not going to get fired over it, that I can learn and grow, and my boss expects me to make mistakes and to learn and grow, it turns out I actually make fewer mistakes. And so my question is, instead of thinking about your boss at work or whatever sort of situation that would be for you, think about the boss that lives in here. Do you have tolerance for your own mistakes? Who puts more pressure on you, the outside world or the inside world? You sound like a nice guy, Luke says. Brandon says, on a serious note, I tuned in a few minutes. I'm glad you tuned in, Brandon. Can you say who you are or your credentials? Yes. I've been working with folks on overcoming procrastination for around 7 years now. I have an education and a psychology degree. I am very interested in the way that we learn habits and the way that we change behavior. And what I've learned in my many years of doing this is that the solutions are not the things that you've been told growing up. The things of, I need to add more accountability. I need to add a harsher consequence, more deadlines. All of these forcing actions don't work. Think about it. Like, how effective is it going to be to try and force yourself to do something that you don't want to do over a long period of time? In the short term, sometimes it works, and it works well enough to confuse us. And when someone else is the one who's forcing us to do it, it's a lot more effective. But I cannot repeatedly force myself to do things because I can't trust that I'm going to give myself the consequence. How many times have I said, okay, you're going to do this thing, and if you don't do this thing, then you can't, have screen time, or you can't have the snack, or you can't have the thing. And then I just take the snack, and I just take the screen time, and I don't do the work. And who's the wiser, right? And then I feel even worse because I know that I've broken a promise to myself. That hurts. What you have to remember is that this isn't a problem of there's something wrong with me. It's a problem of the strategy that you're using. And what I teach in my community is all about rewards, intrinsic rewards, finding meaning in why this matters to me. So instead of forcing myself to do something that I don't want to do, I'm encouraging myself to do something by proving why I do want to do it. So for example, I have to read a lot of books, a lot of studies, learn a lot to be good at what I do. But you know what happens when I finish reading a book? Nothing. There's no proof that it mattered, that reading this book was a good use of my time. And so a lot of times I start to question internally, what's the point? Why should I bother? What's in this for me? And is there a consequence for me not reading the book? No. So really, there's no reward. There's no consequence. Why should I bother? How many of the things that you are putting off right now don't have a good short-term consequence or don't have a good short-term reward? And if so, isn't that probably the reason that you aren't doing it? Brandon, I'm glad to hear you're feeling seen. If you check over to my page, you'll find that there's a link right at the top. We have 2 Zoom calls every week. There's, of course, a video course included. But what I'm always saying with my community I give everything away for free that I can because I really care about helping people and I care about this problem on a global scale. But listening to me talk is sort of like listening to someone tell you how to ride a bike. Like, at some point, you're going to have to get on the bike and ride it. And the hardest thing to do is to learn how to ride a bike by yourself. The easiest thing is to have a community of people who are running along next to you, helping you and picking you up when you fall down. Because it is going to be an imperfect process of trying to overcome years of habits that you're trying to break. And so I would love to have anyone who is listening right now to join our community. We have calls on Tuesday nights and on Wednesday afternoons. We've got people from 4 different continents, I believe. It's really a great place. Anyway, moving on, more comments here. Beautifully Broken says, it's a list of phone calls or things to schedule, and now they're sitting on that list for weeks now. And the longer it sits on your list, the worse you feel, right? That dark cloud is just gaining more and more mass and volume because it's not the task that you're avoiding anymore. It's the feeling of guilt, of shame, of not having, of not having handled that task. You feel like you're someone who doesn't get things done, who can't be counted on, who's lazy. Those things aren't true. You've got a computer up in your brain. And one of the programs that this computer runs is when it sees something that is uncomfortable or dangerous, it avoids it to protect you. You are the descendant of your ancestors who used to scan the horizon for predators at all times. They were paranoid. But that's what kept them alive, and that's why you exist today, because they were paranoid. Now, you are also paranoid, but the things that you are on the lookout for is emotional discomfort. You want to be safe. You want to be warm. You want to be comfortable, and that makes sense. I'm glad that made sense, Apple Sheila. I'm supposed to be packing to move right now, but my AC is broken and I'm in subtropics. Whew, I bet it is hot. I bet even your phone is overheating listening to me talk. Thanks, Brandon. See you later. Marcine says, procrastination on projects, product creation, working for myself. So entrepreneurs have a unique problem, right? There's this idea, I think it's called the Parkinson's Law, where the time that you are given to complete something is the amount of time that it will take to do it. So if I give you 7 days to do something, that it'll take you 7 days to do it. If I give you 7 hours to do it, it'll take you 7 hours. And if I only give you 1 hour, it'll only take you 1 hour. We basically will work to fill the time that we're given. But when you're an entrepreneur, you become the boss. And so now you just have all the time in the world. And even when you're totally broke and you have to work to make money and put food on the table, still, we will often procrastinate and put things off. And what you'll learn is that sort of fear that you thought would light the fire under you, it doesn't light the fire like you thought it would. You're used to people forcing you to take action, having some sort of accountability or a deadline that will, spark action. And it doesn't work that way. When you're the boss, there's no repeatable consequence. You have to find ways to have intrinsic rewards. I'm going to tell you my strategy for this now. Oh, you like my camera? I'm glad, Zane. I've been experimenting with different camera settings. I have a Nikon that I just plug into my computer. It's had a lot of lag and latency and some limerence recently, but I think I've adjusted the camera enough to make it work. Okay, so let me talk about what works for me and my clients. I use something I call the marbles system. Now, we know that behavior that is rewarded is repeated. I mean, just look at any sort of teaching or training or anything that you know about learning new things. The more that you reward behavior, the more that your brain is going to want to do it. Think about when you learn to brush your teeth, right? Now you don't even think about it, hopefully. You just do it because you were rewarded so many times to the point where your brain said this is a good behavior. Now, as an adult, when you want to learn a new behavior, you need to repeat that same process, but there's no one following you around saying good job all the time. So what we want to do is give our brain proof that what we're doing matters. Think about the reading a book example I gave earlier. There's no proof that doing it matters unless I create proof. Now, when I'm playing a video game, I will open up every book in the video game and read it because I know that I'm going to get +1 intelligence, or I'm going to open some new quest line. There's going to be something that happens that proves to me that spending that time was a good use of my time. But in real life, I don't have that proof unless I create it. Unless I have something that proves that I am getting closer to the finish line. A lot of times life feels like you're running a race, but you're on a treadmill. You can't really tell that you're getting closer to the finish line because you don't have any feedback loops. So create feedback loops. Every time you read a book, do a TikTok live stream, answer an email, do a push-up, whatever it is that you would say, this is a desirable behavior. This is helping me to get closer to my goals. Give yourself some proof. Now, what I do and what I teach is every time you do one of these things, whether it's starting, whether it's continuing, or whether it's finishing, whenever you feel like you deserve the reward, pick up a marble, say something about it, drop it in a bowl, and then when you get to the end of the week, count up how many marbles you got, write it down, dump them out, and do it all over again. This is one of the easiest feedback loops you can create for yourself. You give yourself a weekly average of how effective, how productive you've been. You can start to track to see what's working and what's not. Okay, I'm going to try this strategy and I only got 30 marbles. And then I try this strategy and now I'm getting 50. Something's working and I've got proof. Sometimes it feels like things aren't working when they really are. And sometimes it feels like things are working when they're really not. You need feedback that tells you what's actually happening. Otherwise, it's likely to run you astray. So what you say when you give yourself a marble, I use a Nikon, Jessica. Nikon D3500. It matters very much what you say when you give yourself a marble. Praise matters. And so if you pick yourself up a marble and you say, "Good job, Jordan," who cares, right? If you don't say anything, who cares? A marble is great because a marble means nothing. If you give yourself a candy bar, it's very easy to cheat because you can eat the candy bar without doing the work. You can take the reward without having deserved it. But with a marble doesn't mean anything unless you decide that it does. And so it's very difficult to cheat with the marbles because you'll know. If you didn't do the work, then the marble doesn't mean anything. And so when I pick up a marble, I have a formula that I use. There's 3 levels to what you say. I'm going to give you an example right now, and I'm going to give an example about how you talk to kids because I find that this is a better teaching example. So let's say that little Jordan shared his toys, and I want him to continue to do this, so I'm going to give him praise. I'm going to give him a reward. So level 1 would be, "Good job, Jordan." I've attached the praise to nothing. It's better than nothing, but it's not very effective. Level 2 would be connecting the praise to the behavior. "Jordan, you just shared your toys. I'm so proud of you. Good job." This is better, but it's not the best. Level 3 is you attach the praise not just to the behavior, but to who you are and why it matters. I often call these identity statements. So you would say something like, "Jordan, I just saw you sharing your toys, and this is proof that you're someone who cares about other people. That's why I'm proud of you." Now, every time I read a book, every time I do a TikTok live stream, every time I work with a client, have a community call, I'm reinforcing these behaviors to the point where I love doing them because I'm connecting in my brain every single time why it matters. Doing this TikTok live stream, what's my reward? I'm not getting paid for this. I'm helping people because I care about it, sure. But I also know that the more of these that I do, the better I'm going to get at helping people. This is training for me. And the more push-ups I do, the stronger I'm going to get, right? So I need to prove to my subconscious, to the back of my brain, that the more of these I do, the better it is for me. But a lot of times I get to the end and I'm like, oh, that's a low number of views, or I wish I had more comments this time. It's very easy to look at the short-term rewards that are included in whatever the task that you're doing and get the wrong idea of why it mattered. I might do 10 push-ups and then look at my arms in the mirror and be like, well, that was a waste of time. I might go on a diet for a week and then look in the mirror and everything looks the same and say that was a waste of time. We know that long-term goals don't always have short-term rewards. And because of that, we often get discouraged and give up. So if you don't want to give up and you want to keep going, then just give yourself proof that what you're doing is making a difference. All right. I'm sure I've missed a number of questions and comments. I'm gonna get back in here. Wow, lots of comments on the camera quality. I'm glad this is working. Hello, Brooklyn. Lily Fit, I'm glad that you like this. All right. I know what to do, but I keep finding ways to get distracted. I feel stupid. Apple user, this is extremely relatable, and I bet everyone in here has felt exactly the same. I'm glad that you shared that. Now, what do we do about it, right? Knowing what to do is not really the issue. It's that there's fear that if I do it, it will be uncomfortable. And I can't handle that uncomfortable feeling. Now, sometimes the uncomfortable feeling is boredom. Oh, thank you for the heart. Sometimes that uncomfortable feeling is boredom. Sometimes it's feeling like this was a waste of time. I mean, imagine if you walked into a dark room, you flipped on the light switch, and then the light didn't turn on. You're not going to keep flipping the switch. You've already seen that this is a waste of time. And a lot of times with the habits that you feel like you should be doing more of, the reason you're not doing them is because it feels like a waste of time. A job interview or job application, right? You send it out, you spend an hour on it, you work really hard, and then you hear nothing. So now you're looking at the next job application and you're saying, God, what a waste of time. Why should I even bother with this? I don't want to do this. Motivation has everything to do with the predicted reward. If you cannot predict that it's going to matter, then you're not going to do it. This is something I talk about often in my community, the Proof Lab, and I want to take a minute to shout that out. I mentioned this earlier. Listening to me talk is sort of like listening to me tell you how to ride a bike. You can learn a lot, but at some point you will have to get on the bike and learn how to ride it. And there is a risk that you might fall. And a lot of times the reason that people hesitate to join a community like mine is, what if it doesn't work? What if I'm the exception and he can't help me? There's that fear in there of what if. And if you don't have a good answer for that, if you don't have certainty that it's going to work, it can be really hard to take action. Look at all the things that you've avoided in your life. Most of them have uncertainty around whether it's going to be successful or rewarding. Is this going to be a good use of my time? I don't know. And so instead, we avoid that uncertainty by choosing to do nothing, which of course has its own consequences, which we're all familiar with. It's very easy to stay stuck in the consuming self-help content land because there's always hope there. It feels good. It's sort of like going to the bookstore and buying a bunch of books. It feels very exciting. And then you get home and you're like, wow, how long is this going to take me to read all these? It's like telling people about your big plans, It feels great to tell people about your big project or your new business or whatever it is. But then to follow through with it is much less rewarding. It's harder. You're not always going to have proof that what you're doing is helping. Sometimes you're going to make mistakes. And that fear is often what keeps you from taking action. So if this is resonating with you, I would highly suggest checking out my community. First of all, we got a 7-day free trial. So if you hate it, you can always quit. Second of all, if you want to make behavior change, we've seen in study after study that the most valuable thing is to have a community of people who are going through the same thing that you are. We have 2 Zoom calls every week. We talk about things like how to set better goals, how to get better at keeping promises to yourself, practical tools and strategies. We give each other advice. One of my favorite things, I've learned a lot about what it takes to be a good teacher and a good coach over the years I've been doing this. And the worst thing is lecture. I'm very good at helping people and teaching people, but I've learned that just telling them what to do is like the worst thing that I can do. Asking them questions is the best thing that I can do. Asking them questions of each other's experiences, because the connections that you need to make are so much easier to make when you're listening to somebody else's problems. It's why it's so easy to solve somebody else's problems, but impossible to solve your own. It's the age-old trope. All right, Juan for sale. I'm almost always afraid of that, wasting time in something that's not going to pay off. That makes sense, Juan. I mean, if you're thinking about your ancestors who literally would die if they spent energy in the wrong way, your instincts are trying to protect you from spending energy that you don't have to spend. Our ancestors were not running for fun like some of us might do. They're not running for their health, they were running for their lives. And so they weren't going to spend energy unless they could guarantee that it was going to be worth their time. You do the same thing whether you realize it or not. And so how can we prove to you that it is a good use of your time? It is a 7-day free trial. Beautifully broken. Notify me when you already answer my question. Okay. What was your question? Let's see. Bungalow. What is it? Bungalow. Should I talk back when disrespected by my boss? Is this a question about procrastination? Are you avoiding doing something about the disrespect from your boss? Because that makes sense. And the way that you frame that question makes it seem like you want to stand up for yourself, but you're afraid to because of what will happen. And so I'm not going to tell you what to do necessarily, because I don't know the situation as well as you do, but I would ask you, what are you avoiding feeling by avoiding taking action? What feeling are you avoiding feeling? What outcome are you avoiding? Potential outcome, I should say, are you avoiding by avoiding taking action? Because that's the first question you should always start with all procrastination is, what am I avoiding and why am I avoiding it? And if you can figure out the root of the problem, some people swing at the leaves, some people chop at the trunk, some people dig at the roots, and only the people who are digging at the roots are actually solving the problem. A lot of times we're thinking things like, I just need to put a like an app blocker, or I just need to delete TikTok off of my phone, or I need to do some sort of like stopping my coping mechanism, when really no one asks, why am I having this coping mechanism to begin with? Why am I trying to avoid these things? What am I trying to avoid? Well, the real truth is that there's something in your soul that you are afraid to feel, that you are afraid will happen to you. And if you can't guarantee that that thing won't happen, then you won't take action. All right, my friends, I'm going to hop off and go have some breakfast. I want to do one last shout out. Procrastination is not your fault. You're not a bad person. This is something that everyone does, whether they admit it or not. A lot of times, the world we live in is very performative. We all put our best foot forward. We're our own PR team for ourselves, right? Do you think that I, as the procrastination coach online, do you think that I don't procrastinate? You really honestly ask yourself that. Of course I procrastinate. Now, I procrastinate a lot less than I used to, and I've got it more in control than I used to. But I like to think about procrastination as someone who's like a handyman, someone who fixes problems around the house. Now, if all you have in your toolbox is a hammer, you're probably going to have a bad time. When the plumbing is broken, a hammer's not going to help you very much. And so my philosophy is trying to have as many tools as you can in your toolbox so that when problems arise, which they will, and you can't avoid them, then instead of taking weeks, months, and years to fix them, you look in your toolbox and you say, I know what I can do. You pull out that tool and you take care of it. Now, the more tools you have, the more successful you're going to be, but you also need practice learning how to use those tools. And I will tell you all about the tools in all of my videos and all of my live streams, but the best place to practice is in a school. And I have a school, and guess what? It's very affordable. There's a 7-day free trial, and after that, it's only $25 a month. Now, ChatGPT did tell me that I should increase it to $40 a month, which I have not done yet, but I have been thinking about it. But I'll make sure that I'm not making that change at least for another couple weeks. But the point is that a school is a place where you are comfortable to make mistakes, where you can learn, because the expectation is that you aren't supposed to know everything, that you aren't supposed to be perfect, to perform productivity, that you don't have to pretend like you have it all together like you feel like you do in the rest of your life. That is something I wish, if I could wave a magic wand and change, it would be this expectation that we all need to be perfect all the time, that no one ever makes any mistakes. No empathy for humanity. And that's why one of the most important thing that I have in my community is this idea of psychological safety, is knowing that you can make mistakes and that the expectation is that you should. I remember I had a client in the community a couple months ago. They said something like, I took a couple of calls off and I was really anxious about it because I knew when I came back I was going to have something to show everybody. And then I remembered what you said, and I just as an experiment came back and I kept my video off and I just listened. And then I heard all these other people who were talking about how they were imperfect, and it gave me more safety, more confidence to share about my imperfections. And then wouldn't you know it, the more they talked about it, the easier it was to come up with strategies and solutions. If you avoid bringing these things up, the more that you resist it, the more that these things persist, right? Do you have to be on Facebook to use your tool? Absolutely not. Bougie redneck. There is a link on my page, and it should take you to Skool, Skool, which is a website that you can access from your phone or your computer or anywhere. And you do not have to be on Facebook to use it. Although I am live streaming on Facebook right now, as well as TikTok. Trying to figure out how to do all this stuff without slowing down my computer too much. TikTok only gives streaming keys to people who do video game content, so I have to have this complicated setup every time I do this in order to use my fancy camera. Forbes says, how do I force myself to go to the gym? All right, this is the last thing I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to hop off. You don't force yourself to go to the gym. That's the answer. Think about in the long term. Forcing yourself to do something that you don't want to do is not a long-term strategy. It will work in the short term sometimes. And if someone else was forcing you to do it, if I showed up on your doorstep with a gun to your face saying you have to go to the gym, you'd probably do it because you'd trust that consequence was real. But when you are the one who's holding the gun, it just doesn't work, because you're not going to give yourself consequences in any sort of consistent way. So what we need to do is, instead of forcing ourselves to do things that we don't want to do, we have to encourage ourselves to do things that we want to do by proving why it matters, by giving ourselves intrinsic rewards, finding the meaning in what it is that we're doing. So when you go to the gym, what does it prove about you? That you're someone who can keep promises to themselves, that you're someone who's getting stronger and healthier, and that the more that you do this, the better it is for you. And if every time you go to the gym, you pick up a marble, you say something about why you did it, what it says about who you are and why it matters, and then you drop it in a bowl, all of a sudden you've got dozens and dozens of marbles over the course of a couple of weeks and months, and it starts to feel like you're getting closer to the finish line, even if it doesn't feel like it when you're looking in the mirror. Rayouf, I have a question. All right, one more question, Rayouf. What is it? What is it? And then I really got to go. Oh. Yes? No? Okay. I'm signing off then. Thanks for joining today, everybody. I really enjoyed today's call. I would highly encourage you to check out my community, the Proof Lab. I believe is it that direction? Or is it that direction? You can just type on my face and you'll see. All right. I try to go live 4 to 6 times a week. Generally, I usually do it in the evenings, but I ran an experiment this morning to do one in the morning, and at least morning for me. And it seems like it went pretty well, so I'll probably do this again. But by all means, my DMs, my messages are always open. So if I didn't get to your question today, I apologize. Please send me a message. And of course, check out my community. We'd love to have you. See you soon.